Latent, not lost. How existing assets become market positions. Hard power, deployed through money and mandate, is no longer enough to solve the world's most challenging problems. Health, education, climate, financial inequality, and justice remain the largest underserved market opportunities of our time. Institutional players are retreating. Building a market position in these spaces means drawing on the capital, talent, and soft power that already exist in proximity to the problem. This edition sets out what those latent assets are and a simple sequence for structuring access to them. Capital without architecture. Around 5 trillion US dollars in remittances have moved over the last decade. Most of this money went directly into households rather than into formal aid systems. Today, tens of thousands of former international development practitioners sit outside formal institutions with no structure to use what they know. The money to work on hard problems exists. The architecture to connect that capital to solutions does not yet exist at scale. The assets closest to hard problems sit inside this gap. Diaspora capital already flows into households, communities, and small enterprises at a scale that often exceeds official development assistance. Operational knowledge that has been built over careers in some of the most difficult environments on earth. Community development infrastructure already reaches the last mile at unit costs formal institutions have struggled to match. Cultural credibility and trusted relationships were built over decades and do not transfer easily to new entrants. The old development architecture bypassed most of these assets. Centralized, grant-based models favored capital that could be tracked through institutional ledgers and reported against log frames. Assets that were relational, informal, or embedded in communities did not fit that reporting structure, so they sat outside it. When key parts of that architecture were dismantled, the assets remained in place, largely unused by formal systems and available for new operating models. The common land. In 18th century England, control of common land changed hands. Communities had used it informally for grazing, farming, and basic sustenance. The land was productive, the inputs were there. What changed was the architecture, legal instruments, property rights, and capital structures that organized scattered common plots into enclosed, privately held, productive units. The people who understood this logic early built the agricultural and industrial markets that defined the next century. Large estate owners and early industrialists consolidated land, increased yields, and created the production base that industrial cities and global markets later built on. Those who continued treating common land as informal and unstructured lost access to it altogether. The model was zero-sum. Value was created and captured by the few, with control shifting away from the communities that had used the land. There is a parallel to the current moment, although the logic can now be applied differently. Diaspora capital, institutional knowledge, and community delivery infrastructure are the common land of the hard problem space today. They are productive, present, and already used informally. The missing piece is the architecture that can turn them into clear outcome units and contractable positions. The first movers who built that architecture will hold market positions that compound. The question is who those positions are built for and with. Copper shows how this can be done with a positive sum orientation. Hundreds of millions of people across sub-Saharan Africa had no formal credit history, but did have real repayment capacity and purchasing power. That latent asset sat outside formal finance. Copper built the architecture, pay-go rails, behavioral data, and mobile money. That turned this into a contractable credit position. Millions of customers and billions in extended credit later, the position compounds with every repayment, and the underlying communities gain access to assets they could not previously finance. It is positive sum because the development gains come from millions of people entering and using the formal financial system. The pattern holds across health, education, climate, and other hard problem spaces. Find the latent assets, build the architecture, and hold the market position. But in this case, value is created, captured, and distributed in ways that support positive sum growth. What latent means. Latent assets are capital, capability, and trust that already exist close to hard problems, but have not yet been structured for deployment at scale. They are underused, labeled as informal, or bypassed by institutional models that need centralized control to function. 6 categories define the latent asset landscape in 2026: diaspora, remittances, and investment capital. Africa's annual remittances are now around $100 billion, exceeding official development assistance in many receiving countries. The Commonwealth diaspora carries an estimated annual investment potential of $73.2 billion. These flows move on family and community ties and do not depend on donor budget cycles. Institutional knowledge and networks. When USAID ceased operations in July 2025, the systems and budgets changed. The knowledge did not. People who built community health systems, land formalization programs, agricultural finance models, and legal empowerment networks still hold presence, credibility, and a field level understanding of what works. Community delivery infrastructure. Community health workers organized under the desk model, that's digitally enabled, equipped, supervised, and compensated, along with paralegal networks, cooperatives, and community facilitators, already deliver services at low unit cost and at scale. The infrastructure exists. The missing element is an outcome contract that makes it financially sustainable. Digital payment rails. India's UPI processed 16.6 billion transactions in February 2026, around US $274 billion in value. Brazil's Pix now processes more daily transactions than credit and debit cards combined in Brazil. These rails make it possible to route diaspora capital through outcome contracts, turning a household transfer into a verifiable development instrument. Trust and cultural legitimacy. Trust is built slowly, lost quickly, and does not move easily between actors. A later entrant cannot buy or compress the time needed to build it. It is the factor that keeps a position in place when other conditions change. Blended finance instruments. As of April 2025, 259 impact bonds were active across 40 countries, including 19 development impact bonds in low and middle income countries. The contracting infrastructure to pay for verified outcomes already exists. From latent to structured. In practice, structuring access to these assets means 3 things: defining a clear outcome unit that can be priced, choosing the local operators and rails that already reach households, and building contracts that share upside between capital and communities. The details differ by sector, but the sequence does not. The organizations in the soft power index are already working this way, turning latent assets into positions that hold in health, education, climate, and finance. Latent and leveraged. Taken together, these categories show that the main inputs for solving hard problems are already in the system. Capital is moving, often at household level. Latent and operational knowledge sit with people who have worked inside the problem for years. Community infrastructure and trusted relationships reach the last mile. What is missing is the architecture that can organize these latent assets into clear outcome units, contracting against them, and run them at scale. The next market positions in hard problems will be built by the leaders who treat these assets as the starting point, not as features of an external system.